Okay, so as you know, Integration Suite is a new capability. Like it is actually a combination of multiple services that SAP has put together. Okay, so just before I go in detail about agenda, I want to give a brief about what is Integration Suite. So Integration Suite is nothing but is a cloud offering from SAP BTP. Okay, where this is a SaaS that can support multiple different capabilities. So it can support integration to B2B, like your B2B scenarios, B2C scenarios, and also it can cover some integration to third-party system connectivity and between SAP system. It touches multiple services internally. And also, let's take an example, like if you want to create an API out of your integration suite, so that is also one of the capability that comes into picture. Like then I want to develop a harmonized data model within SAP BTP using SAP backend, any of the backend services. I can use another service within SAP Integration Suite. Right? In total, it touches almost 7 different services, and that is combined to give us a whole integration platform as a service called Integration Suite. Okay, so that's a brief about Integration Suite, and we can actually talk about agenda. So, like in this session, we'll try to cover as much as possible, like what is a distributed architecture and what is their challenge, how Integration Suite is going to resolve those challenges in the near future. Let's say if we have an ecosystem of both SAP and non-SAP system, how we are going to solve that problem, and also like so how the Integration Suite UI is going to look like in general, like how to get the access for BTP and how to get the access for CPI, that we can talk in detail. Then how to create an API within Integration Suite, that is the next topic that we can talk about. Like then describing operation mode of API architecture, right? Like many of the customers that you might work on, like they want to go with a microservice architecture. If they come with a microservice architecture, how do I make the microservice as an API? That we can talk in detail. So the backbone of microservice could be your REST or your OData, that we can talk in detail. And some of your customer might be interested in having your harmonized data model. So that is nothing but SAP has come up with a new offering called SAP Graph. Like we can actually go through these kind of tools, like how we can use in your projects. Okay. So yeah, Integration Suite is nothing but, as I explained earlier, it's a cloud offering from BTP. So in old days, right, like BTP is called a SAP Cloud Platform. So starting from last fiscal year, SAP actually changed this one to SAP Cloud Platform to SAP BTP. And in the SAP BTP, so they club multiple services under a bigger umbrella called SAP Integration Suite. And this is something like a platform as a service. So it's not a cloud, it's not a SaaS, it's a platform, it's iPaaS. So platform as a service, where it touches multiple components. As you can see here, it touches API management for API to create and manage APIs, and it touches cloud connector. It touches cloud connector to connect to any backend system, and it also has open connectors. Let's take an example. I want to connect to any non-SAP system, like I want to connect to AWS or Azure or my box. So I can use open connectors here. And CPI plays a major role in the entire era of Integration Suite, where SAP CPI stands for SAP Cloud Platform Integration, which is a process integration tool for SAP, where you can design an integration with your iFlow. So you will be creating an iFlow within CPI, where you can actually connect synchronous systems. You can actually make a synchronous API exposure or synchronous process integration or asynchronous process integration. So CPI plays a major role, and that will be helpful to also connect to multiple services which is available inside integration suites with its own adapters. And also integration touches on enterprise messaging. So enterprise messaging is another offering from SAP, where if I want to have a kind of a queuing mechanism, then I have to go with enterprise messaging so that I can implement asynchronous based communication with my source and target. And coming back to the cloud, connector. As I told, actually, your cloud integration tool has multiple adapters that can connect to your customer experience, SAP HANA Cloud, SuccessFactors, all other SAP systems on the cloud. Because nowadays SAP exposing all their SAP Cloud SaaS solution as an API so that you can use in your SAP CPI, then you can actually orchestrate and design a process flow to connect to multiple systems. And this is nothing but your cloud connector, where actually you will be connecting to SAP S4HANA as an example. Like you can connect to your ECP, EC system, or any other ERP system. Let's take an example. If I want to connect with any other on-premise system, like I want to connect to a normal Linux system for SFTP-based scenario, you can use a cloud connector. Just this is the picture, like a diagram, the picture how the integration suite is span across multiple services and how it is connected integratedly to touch multiple services. Any queries on these slides? Yeah, thank you. I can go to the next slide. So when I talk about like integration suite, right, like it has multiple features in it. Like as I explained earlier, it has managing the APIs and actually implementation of interfaces and mappings. So this is called as mix and match. SAP provide another service called SAP Integration Suite that is called as actually your SAP Content Advisor. So Content Advisor is used to do the integration scenario for your EDI-based integration. Let's take an example. I want to send an order information to an EDI. So I can use SAP Content Advisor using mix and match. It has all AA-based prepackaged solution and prepackaged mappings as well as prepackaged contents you can use to design your iFlows with mix and match. So that is another one. And managing trading partners, like you can actually use Open Connector to connect all your partners or your partner API systems. And actually, like you can even, it provides the integration guidance like SAP CPI, right? Like when it does suppose SAP Cloud Platform Integration. With Cloud Platform Integration, you can create multiple different patterns of integration. Either you can create your inbound, like it's just ingress integration based on synchronous or asynchronous, and also your egress integration, which is nothing but outbound, like ingress synchronous or asynchronous. Mostly, most customers, they want to have a synchronous when they go out, when they push out a event from a SAP system. We can talk about how that is connected in a different architecture landscape. And API integration, like there are multiple ways that actually you can create your APIs with API management. And any API, like let's take an example, you have a CPI. With CPI, you can even expose that service as a API to the outside world using API management. Then it also help to assess the migration scenarios. Let's take an example. I have some PIPO scenario, like I have existing PIPO interfaces, which is lying on my ESR and my ID, and I have multiple ICOs. And SAP CPI by default provides some assessment capability to migrate from SAP PPAPO to CPI. How we can handle that? We can actually it can provide some assessment scenario, and based on that, we can go ahead and either custom develop a new thing, or we can actually go ahead and use a prepackaged solution. The next feature is something like a hybrid integration model. So when it comes to SAP CPI, so it will touch your integration orchestration process to connect to both on-premise system as well as cloud system. So this is your hybrid integration model where you can orchestrate multiple systems and you can create your own data model as per your target or as per your source, and actually you can send the information to your target whenever your all the transformation logic are complete. So this is a main feature about integration suites. Then we can move on to the next slides. Like as I explained earlier, like this is the complete suite overview where actually it touches all SAP system connectivity, and just brief about how non-SAP systems are connected here, and what are the various adapters are used, and how the services are connected with SAP and non-SAP system. This is a brief diagram. Okay. So coming to the distributed architecture. So distributed architecture is a kind of ecosystem. Let me go to the next slide, like you can understand it better. So in the olden days, right, like when you have a legacy system as well as when you have a system which has multiple partners and multiple integration platform, you might actually have a common decentralized system, okay, where you'll try to integrate all your messages. Let's take an example. I want to get the point of sale data in my retail store. So if I want to get the point of sale in my retail store, I need to have a separate system lying on my retail store front as well as at the back office. I need to have a system which can provide me data about my product information, as well as I need to have another system that can give me inventory availability information. I need to have another system that have actually it will have another information about my transactional handling or any kind of transaction confirmation. So you will have a distributor architecture in your previous world, and you will, and each and every system follows its own architecture and own data model and has its own example. Like if one system can follow XML based protocol, another system can follow JSON based protocol. Like you will be implementing different architecture everywhere. And actually, if as a customer, if I want to go with a common platform that can touch upon everything into a single bucket, SAP Integration Suite offers that capability as of. So that's a distributed architecture preference as well as, and that's a challenge that, so because I work with multiple retail customers as well as multiple system outside, right? Like I could see where SAP Integration Suite plays a major role in terms of digital transformation, where I can actually eliminate multiple systems. For example, like I don't want to have store related systems separately. I don't want to have warehouse related systems separately. I don't want to have actually other systems, example, ERP system separately. So this all the system will be touched upon different integration layer. Now I can have a single integration platform to connect everything and to have a harmonized data structure for my enterprise with a reduced consumption of my architecture. So that's a complete thing. And another thing, what we see, right? Like let's take an example. If a customer is submitting an order, and let's take an, if you are a retail store and you are actually raising an order against your inventory, and something goes wrong in your back office or in your actually in your any of your system, it's very difficult to bring the observability of where is the failure. And also I don't have the clear visibility of my distributed trace. So that's another offering. SAP is now coming up to speed, and also they are trying to integrate all the systems with the integration of either any APM tool like Splunk, Dynatrace, and SignalFx. So we will actually talk in detail later, and we see those are the different capability gap when you have the distributed architecture, implementing your observability and managing different release management, and have a common monitoring system and latency in all the transactions which touch upon multiple ecosystem, and quality of service and security, because your one system will follow different authentication, another system will follow different authentication. Like we have different kind of security gaps between multiple platforms, and actually observability. So that is nothing but your distributed tracing. And when let's take an example to have the enterprise wide architecture that we see as a biggest challenge as of today with the distributed architecture. So like SAP proposes new way of doing this one. And here is an example like where they explain how I explained about the retail store example. This is another example like because it touches different ecosystem and SaaS solution, and that brings more complexity to your overall enterprise architecture. How you can actually mitigate that using an integration suite is going to be the next step. So let's take an example. If I have a store retail app application, like I can have a application, only a standalone application that I can run on my store, and that is going to be a digital application. So in order to connect to my all system, I can have a single common integration platform with integration, SAP Cloud Platform integration or your entire integration suite, where you can actually expose everything as an API from your SAP. And also you can actually leverage the same APIs to be connected to your third-party system as well as to your other SAP ecosystem as well. And also and through this SAP API management, you can implement a common security protocol like the most advanced security protocols of OAuth 2.0. You can have a OAuth 2.0 based authentication through your APIs. And also, if you want to get multiple information about your store and everything, you can have CPI to orchestrate to go to inventory, get the inventory availability, and to go to product information to get the product information, and to get actually order confirmation information. CPA plays a major role in such a scenario where actually you can orchestrate multiple things and it can give a real-time response as quick as possible. Any questions or doubts till this time? I'll move on to the next slide. So this is nothing but your integration suite overview, which is I can go to this browser. Right? Team, I need your actually all your user, your company email address so that I will work with the team to get all the access for you in the BTP. Especially, we provisioned a separate training server in BTP for integration suite. We can add all the participants in that one so that they will get the entire access to the integration suite service. So I will actually share the cockpit access as well as integration suite service URL, like both the URLs to you in the team, so that team can go to the cockpit and they can see how the cockpit works. So when you log into your cockpit, first it will ask you for registration, and you need to register yourself. So okay, let me show you that step as well. So if you go to BTP SAP, I hope actually each and everyone has some trial account already created for your corporate email address. If not, so I need your help to go ahead and click on this button, go to this landing page, which is nothing but account.hanaondemand.com. Go to this landing page, click on register. Okay, so now it will pop up and you can actually provide your email address and you can actually proceed with all the steps. Then you will get a final email to activate your account. Once you activated your account, then you need to use the same thing here to sign in. So once you sign in into this account, then you will be landing into this page. So you will have a company called Alzen. So they are the providers for the testing for the training account. And once you have this one, you can see a sub account for SAP Fiori, but this is mostly for integration suite. So once you click on this one, you should be able to navigate around multiple tabs. If you go to the services like Service Marketplace, then you can type something called integration suite. Okay. So once you click on this one, just click on go to application. You can also see the subscription. So just I will walk through about the entire cockpit setup, right? Like let's take an example. I want to onboard integration suite for my client. First and foremost, you need to have the service called integration suite. And in order to make this available in your cockpit, this should be first entitled to you as per the cost. Because integration suite has two kind of offering. Okay, let's take an example. I am a customer, I'm an enterprise customer. I need to choose what kind of licensing I need to go, whether I need to go with light, standard, or premium. Okay, so let's take an example. I have multiple integration in my account. I want to connect to that one. I can actually go ahead with premium account. I have only like limited, like when I talk about multiple, I have 200 or 300 plus integrations. It is always recommended to go with premium account. When I have only 50 plus, it's good to have standard. If you have below 20, it is good to have light. So as an enterprise, they will always try to land in standard, because in future, by considering the integration landscape growth as well as a strategic growth, they will land in a standard. But the premium is the one that you will get a lot of features, like you will get dedicated servers in CPI, API management, and other services. So you have to work with SAP to get that one.
Hey, you know, ZaranTech now offers SAP corporate training. That's right. Train your workforce in SAP with our comprehensive program. We offer customized courses, certified trainers, and hands-on labs for both individuals and businesses. Our standout features: bespoke training, fully configured servers for practice, in-house materials, and a dedicated LMS. Plus, get session recordings and 24/7 support. From functional to technical modules, we have got it all. Choose ZaranTech for SAP training and watch your team excel. Learn, upskill, succeed with ZaranTech.
And here you need to have the integration suite entitlement. So integration, so since for training, I chosen the plan as free, but actually when it comes to your actual corporate account, it will be completely either light, standard, or premium. So mostly enterprise will more go on standard or actually a premium account. Okay, once you have this one entitlement, then you will be able to go ahead and create your subscription. And actually, just to give a background, and so after this training, you might lose access for this tenant, but you can create your own free account in your trial account. So SAP gives 60 days of free trial account with your same email account, with your same corporate email account. You can go ahead and create your own cockpit and create all the services whichever you want, and they are giving us free. So once you type here,
so this account will be valid only till the training session.
Correct. Only till the
for next
session.
Okay, for next 12 days, this is valid, and after that, we have to create another
own trial account.
Trial account.
Trial account.
Okay.
So once yes, I can actually demo to one team, like one team member, how to create your own at the end of the session or some middle of the session. I'll actually walk through to you, like how to create a trial account and actually how to get started your own CPI with your trial account. But that should not take much time.
Yeah.
So now once you click on create, it will take almost 60 minutes to create entire services. And you have to, once it is created, you need to go, there will be an option, go and navigate capability. You need to activate all the capabilities. So once you activate all the capabilities, then you should be able to see the CPI here. Okay. And once everything is set, like you're subscribed to Integration Suite, and also, and actually, I feel like I can start working on this one. Like you should see, this is subscribed, and you should see all the relevant things, like all the roles added. Because Integration Suite touch upon multiple roles, you should see all the roles here. Okay. And once the roles are created, then you need to go and assign access to yourself. I'll actually show you the step-by-step process, but I'm just walking through the overall process. So Integration Suite, you can get activated here, and this will be valid. And once it's done, then you can go back to your Integration Suite. This is a landing page for Integration Suite, where it has multiple capabilities. So here it gives us all the capabilities. So main is integration, process integration, which is nothing but a CPI. And next is your API management, where you can actually create multiple APIs and you can implement multiple policies in the APIs. I'll walk through that one in detail. Then your various monitoring capabilities. So monitoring capability for integration and monitoring capability for your API proxies. And then your monitoring capabilities for your API proxy errors. Let's take an example. I have developed multiple APIs. How do I kind of monitor the traffic, and how do I understand what is the error for each and every API? So these are the various offerings that it gives. So when I talk about capabilities, these are the default capability Integration Suite gives, like your CPI, your API, then trading partners, then interfacing mapping, then actually your so this is nothing but your open connectors, manage and provide integration technology. This is a guidance and assistant migration. And this is a thing we actually, these two are paid ones. So especially let's take an example, manage, provide technology guidance, and this is a paid one. And this is something like a co-innovation with SAP, where it will bring various pre-packaged solution to your cockpit with a paid version. So if I want to activate these two, I need to pay to SAP. Then the SAP actually will give its access to the SAP's other customer solution that you can view in your tenant. Let me show you other capabilities as well. Yep. So once your capabilities are managed, you should see this is active, and your API management will be active, and integration content advisor will be active. And just a quick note on integration advisor. So you should be able to see all the mix and match, but when it comes to deployment, you need a premium account to test, or a kind of a standard account to test anything. They are just giving us access to see the prepackaged content and prepackaged mappings, but we cannot run anything on the free account because it involves EDA partners licensing, so that SAP ties up that to a standard account. Okay, so another, which is your trading partner, open connector, so all those things will be active. So this is a capability as a holistic SAP gives us. Okay, so let me go to CPI first. Okay, so this is your home landing page that we gone through. Like, and next you see your discover page. So discover is something like I have discovery mode for my existing integration. Example, I'm getting a requirement to connect to success factors integration. So you can come here. You can actually, so whenever you get a requirement, my recommendation is to first and foremost thing, go to integration suite, check for any standard prepackaged solution. So this is a way that you can actually check your SAP cloud integration and check SAP. And here you can even see some more components of business. Second, so vendors, I can even choose SAP. Let's take an example. I got a requirement for success factors. We can choose success factors. So SAP, line of businesses, HR, and industries. So which industry that I'm working for? I'm working for public sector industry. So it will give prepackaged solution for public sector industry and products. It will pop up all the products. So it will give the products for SAP HR. Then it can give the cloud integration for SAP RPS. And I can choose countries. So once you have this one, you will have the prepackaged solution. So you can take any, because I chosen as government, because government is as prepackaged solution for NPO pension contribution. And this has its own artifacts, iFlows. And in order to run this iFlow, SAP always provide a prepackaged documentation. Okay, so how to run this iFlow, how to configure this content, everything will be documented here. Let's take an example. If I want to copy the solution to my Cockpit, I just need to copy this one. Click on copy, this will get copied. And SAP is working to bring multiple other solutions as part of prepackaged content, because whatever solution they work with other customers, and if it is a common solution that can touch upon, that can solve problem for other customers, they are trying to push this to a discover mode. You can go ahead and even bring those see the solution here also. So this is just a brief about your complete discovery mode. You can play around with all these filters, and you can actually get all those APIs, all those integrations into prepackaged content, and you can copy those solution to your design mode, and you can actually go ahead and start using those prepackaged content as per your documentation. Then I'll come to the next tab for APIs. So I think actually the team knows there is a API hub available as a global api.sap.com. So once you type this one, this is your entire business accelerator hub. Let's take an example. I want to see the metadata for sales order create in S4 system. So I'll give a background about it. I'm getting a requirement to expose a sales order API to my outside world. I want to, in order to expose that API, I want to create a Swagger based YAML, which means your API contract to my consumer. So in order to create those API contract, first I need to know what is my metadata, or what is my default API metadata looks like. So like if I can come to api.sap.com, and I can put API underscore sales order underscore SRV. Once I type this one, it proposes multiple API offering from different systems. So it will actually propose from SAP HANA Cloud, and it doesn't propose on on-premise one. The reason behind that, actually, the cloud one will have the latest and greatest availability. But if you go back to your on-premise one, it doesn't provide the latest one, because your cloud will be the latest one, and your on-premise will be your at least 2 to 3 versions older one. So because you can see what is the latest one that is available for on-premise, but what is the latest one available for cloud. But the cloud will be the latest one. But if you have anything on the on-premise, you can choose this one here. And I'm going to the on-premise based mechanism. You can choose this OData V2 API. And actually, I can see my entire contract. This is my API contract. So in order to develop this contract, you need a metadata. I will actually tell you how to, with the metadata, how to create those contracts. Okay, so this is my contracts. Let's take an example. If I am a consumer, I want to test this one. I can use any of these API models or API available methods. I can use these methods and I can test my. So this is the overall about your API. So this is tied up to your managing API calls. So it provides the same information. It actually help you to manage, build, and deploy and monitor these APIs. So this help you to whatever you see in ap.sap.com. This brings the same information.
Okay, is that the yeah? So is that the prepackaged content API, or it just provides the metadata for that API?
So here, let me go to a same thing here. I'll type a sales order. It actually provides you API also, wrapped up API. So 1 second. It actually provides the entire API management, how to expose it.
Okay, so that includes mapping everything on
API doesn't need any map.
Okay.
So a transformation will be done in your cloud platform integration. APIs are just it's just a pass through. You will be adding one more layer of policy. Like you will be implementing multiple policy to act as your gateway.
Okay. So I believe I assume it just provides the metadata, right? So you can use them.
It actually provides the artifacts. What are the artifacts right up here? Let's take an example. This one. So it provides all the OData services and all those things. So let's take an example. I want to create a consumer sales intelligence. It provides all the OData native API. With this API, you can go ahead and create. Let's take. I can create what I can do. I can copy this API and I can expose this API as an SAP API managed based API. So this gives for a particular requirement what are the APIs are required. I can use this and I can either copy the entire hub or I can actually even copy API by API and I can wrap up into a single API management. We can touch in detail about this one.
Yeah.
So then coming back to your type systems. So as we discussed initially, so if I want to connect to any EDI based system, SAP Integration Suite offers a separate service within its iPaaS called SAP Content Advisor. And that gives all the EDI based transaction and that you can actually use this one as part of your implementation. So this will have almost I could see almost all the customers have used this whole prepackaged solution. But they might create their own mix and match as part of their requirement, but they will be using this transformation while developing their ideas. And coming back to your design. So this is the overall summary about your discover mode. Coming back to your design mode. So this is a design mode where you will be developing your package, and within package you will be creating multiple artifacts. So let me create a separate package now. I can actually demo to you how to create a package and how to start with one artifact at least. Okay, so here in this one, you will be creating multiple artifacts. Either you can create your integration flow or your value mapping or your API. So that we have seen previously. Like if I want to create a harmonized data model using OData, I can create those API also. Then I can actually have a common script collection that I can use for multiple integration flow or your message mapping. So this message mapping will be used for PO based scenario where so even as I explained earlier, you can even actually develop PO also in CPI where you can actually have message mapping tied up to that one. Then your integration adapter. So let's take an example. If I want to develop a custom adapter, that I can go with that one. In order to develop the adapters, you need some default libraries, and those libraries will be referred from functional libraries. And actually, you can have your data type and message type like your PO. So these are the various things that you can use with this one. Like we can actually touch maximum artifacts in our detailed session. Coming back to your graph. So graph is nothing but this I need to provision the server. So but actually I will tell you in general. So graph is nothing but your data model that you need to have a harmonized way. So when I talk about harmonized way, so I want to have common data structure with a deep entity set. I can use instead of let's take an example. I want to develop a big API with a connection of multiple microservices. So your microservices, let's take an example, you want to expose sales point of sale information. So point of sale information requires multiple OData API connection. I can create a common graph, like I can create a common data model, and with the data model, I can even do a complete mapping structure using graph methodology, and I can get that model to be exposed to my consumer. Once your graph is available, then you can deploy to your tenant, and those models, those APIs can be consumed by your consumers. So this is just a brief about graph. We can touch upon the graph in our session. Then coming back to your B2B scenarios. So this is your this touches your integration advisor, where you will be creating your company profile, your trading partner information, and all the licensing agreement that you will be connecting to your B2B company. Let's take an example. If you're connecting to EDI based scenario, let's take an example like the transaction is happening with the EDI based transaction. Each and every EDI has its own different partnering numbers. And for the partnering numbers, you need to configure all the all your trading partners as well as your company profile, so that they can actually even connect your system. You can connect to their system. So everything will be configured in this one. And once your connections are set, and you can actually make a connection to this one. So EDI plays a major role in your banking statement, and you're actually invoicing between retailers and your wholesale stores. So where you will have a number of transactions. So we can talk some scenarios and we can see how to create those profiles. But these are all requires a licensing. So SAP just provide us to create some sample things, but we cannot test anything because of the licensing factors. Coming back to your custom type systems, like this I explained earlier, like let's take an example. Apart from your standard type system, that if you want to go ahead for your other type system, you can create those type system and you can embed to it. So that's another offering SAP is providing us, and this requires a registration to SAP's servers. So let's take an example. If I'm creating a separate ASCII content, that separate thing has to be registered into my SAP's BTP operations, so that whenever the communication happens, SAP should whitelist such a kind of a system, and so that I can have my traffic. And coming back to mix and max, so this is this I explained earlier, like this is nothing but message implementation guidance, where you can import your mapping between, let's take an example, I have a EDI based mapping and I have my actually IDOC based mapping. If I can import those things, I can create a separate mapping here, and I can do my structure based mapping for my EDI based transaction. So EDI based transaction has the mapping either in mix, and your operation mappings are done in your max. All your mix and max will be developed in this one, and this will be used in your CPI as a wrapper component. And so once you deploy this one into your BTP, you can use as part of your message mapping and operation mapping in CPA, and that can use to transfer your data through secure EDI channel. So that's interesting about both mix and max. So any questions till this time? But mostly mix and max, most of the customer I have seen, like very limited, they are going with SAP CPI because of licensing factor as well as the costing factor. They go with standard EDI technology, whatever they are using. Like SAP just provide those as either they will push an IDOC to the system and they will do all the transformation on their side. Like they are using very minimum content advisor because it's very costly when compared to the other market offering products. Any queries till now? Okay. So next is testing framework. So when you develop an API, you can actually you want to test that API with different headers and with different methods and operations. SAP provide that one with test API functionality within this one. This is another offering. Like actually, once you develop that API, which are deployed into your integration suite under SAP API management, you can take its service path and come here and choose your operation, and you can test and find the response here. So this is just a mimic of the Postman that SAP trying to test and find out the entire thing. So you can even ask what is the difference I'm going to get. So with Postman, I can see a latency of 2 to 3 milliseconds. But even let's take an example. If I want to avoid those traffic latency and everything, you can use this standard API to test it. That's just another offering from SAP side. And some companies might restrict even Postman or some REST API client. So even they can go ahead with this native tool from SAP. They can test this one. And coming back to the configure API. So this is just a design mode for your API management, where you can create your API proxies as well as and convert those proxies into a product. And if needed, you can actually have a product-based authentication, or if you are not going to go ahead with the product-based architecture, you can even stick with the proxy-based microservices. So, and actually, in order to create a proxy, you need different API providers, and that is you've been used here in API provider, and you will have multiple certificates to have the connectivity. To this certificate can be used for anything that you're communicating with outside world, or actually somebody is connecting to you. And this is a key value map. We can actually talk in detail about KVM, policy template, everything in detail, so that people will know how to create an API with different policies. Any queries till this time?
Okay, so since we are in the API section, we can actually touch base upon some of the APIs that actually how to create an API with API management. Okay, so yeah, so what is an API? So you guys might know. So API is nothing but it is an application programming interface where you will create you will create data model or a back office or a backend data model to your end consumer with a defined security gateway as well as required transformation as well as required canonical change in API standards. Let's take an example. I have a requirement to expose my purchase order API to outside consumer. I want to have a common integrity-based security architecture with API management, and also I have a requirement to control my throttling effect. So let's take an example. I don't want to have a consumer to hit like 1,000 calls in a second. So I can even control my throttling effect of my calls in API management. And also I can even have a protocol transformation. I can actually go for OData from my native OData to a REST-based API transformation with my API management. So this is a basic about API management. And these APIs are modular based and also reusable and also extendable. So on this acts as your building blocks for your end application or your consumer application. So we will actually see how to create an API for your end consumer application and how to reuse them with different products. But SAP now, let's say in the modern era of SAP standards, SAP product usability become very limited, and most of the consumers are now going ahead with actually SAP proxy API based proxies instead of product based. We can actually I can even show you how to create those APIs and how to consume that API in your system. Let me go to API management here. So yeah, so let's take an example. I create an API. Before I create an API, first I need to create an API provider. This API provider is going to come from my cloud system or it is going to come from my on-premise system. I need to actually configure this information here. So let's take an example. I'm just configuring for SAP S4 HANA Cloud. So I can give us and in connections. So since it is coming from the cloud, I can actually give us internet. I can give my host as okay. So default port should be 443. I don't want to use SSL. I'll just make a normal connection. Then I can choose either if I want to have a common authentication for my entire provider, or actually I can have my own authentication at the individual API. Let's take an example. If you choose basic authentication here, so irrespective of any, let's take an example, your S4 HANA Cloud will have multiple APIs. You will have purchase order API, you will have sales order API, you will have actually your invoice API, all the APIs. If you want to connect with a single user-based authentication, you can input here. So some organization want to have a common IDs for bunch of API strategy, they will go ahead with this one. But some of them, they want to have an individual connectivity to my backend. And that will be handled in a different way. I can show you how that can be handled. In that case, we can choose a one, and then you can save this guy and test configuration. Yes. So once this is done, then you're set to create an API. So now you can create an API here. So according to your client specific naming convention, you can follow that naming convention and create an API here. So the previous tab that you see for creating your API provider, which is nothing but your different backend system. So I have created a backend system by choosing SAP HANA Cloud. But in some cases, if you have a system for on-premise, you can go to your cockpit, come to connectivity, go to cloud connectors. You can see those systems, whatever systems that are connected here. So I'll make sure I connect to one backend system, and we can actually do some exercise by how to create an API. But I'm just giving an introduction how to connect to HANA Cloud, so we can actually show you how to create an API for an on-premise system. So we'll get connected with one S4 system, and we can show you how that can be done. Yeah, this tab is for that one. Okay, so then coming back to your API proxies. So now select your API provider. Since I have only one API provider, I can choose SAP HANA Cloud, and I can give my URL as PO, and I can give my API name as API underscore, and use my same title here, and your API based path is. This is nothing but your choosing purchase order B2 API. This is my technical name. So in general, it will come like this: SAP ODC/API name. So then you can actually use all your and service type. Since it's a OData service, I have given a same OData, and you have multiple services. Either it can be your REST, it can be your SOAP, it can be anything else. So these are the three different protocol that SAP API management is supporting as of today. So since it's OData, I'm choosing as an OData, and I'm creating this one. So since this is not a standard host, so it's telling the host is not found, but we do not have any cloud-based system at this point of time for our training. But I will get created a separate SAP EC system. Then I'll show you how to get that connected. Once you have this one, and you can choose your API status active or inactive. So mostly this is active version. And if it is a test one, you can put as a beta, but if it is active version, that is ready to test. And let's check an example. If I want to implement different gateways, so my gateway could be security-based gateway, or it could be a traffic throttling based gateway. I can use all these policies. And if I want to connect to my backend, I can even use those things as my policies here while connecting to that backend. So we can actually see these policies in detail when it comes to our API management session, how to use different policies for different requirement, and also what are various policies available in general, especially like security policies, traffic management policies, and you have a protocol transformation policies, your extension policies, and mediation policies. So this extension policies will be used for any custom requirement, and your mediation policies will be used for any kind of a protocol transformation. Okay, so we can see in detail when it comes to our API session, but this is a way that we will create an API in general, and each and every API will have your source proxy. Like if we go to your policy, you will have two flows, which is nothing but your proxy endpoint flow and target endpoint flow. Proxy endpoint is your API consumer side, and target endpoint. Target endpoint is the system which you're going to connect. And I'll explain in detail like when to implement policies at proxy endpoint and when to implement policies at your target endpoint. So those are different strategies that we need to follow, and we will actually see in detail about that. So now I'm saving this guy on this API. So this is API that is ready to consume now.
What sets ZaranTech apart in SAP corporate training? It's our unique blend of expertise and innovation. We offer customized courses tailored to each client's needs, ensuring relevant, targeted learning. Our vast trainer database brings you wisdom from the best in the field. Need resources? Access our extensive training material repository anytime. We are all about measurable results, providing detailed student metrics to track progress. And we don't just teach, we build community. Join our thriving social media network, connecting learners beyond boundaries. With ZaranTech, you are not just training, you are transforming your SAP expertise.
So click on this one, it should give something. Yeah, it's telling target not found. So we'll try to create an API with our standard thing and we'll go ahead with this. This is about, in general, about your API management. In this one, you have multiple tabs, especially for your certificates. So this will be used. Let's take an example. In the same case, my HANA cloud system. Similarly, I'm having an connection to my CPA. So I can even actually expose my CPAs on API to my outside world. So if I don't want to go ahead with that certificate with basic authentication, I can go ahead with certificate-based authentication. So in that case, so let me create a API provider for my CPA system. Okay. Let's assume, so I'm just creating a CPI flow with sender as HTTPS, and I want to connect this entire flow or expose this entire flow as an API. So I'm just showing an example how to do that one. First, I created an integration flow. And in this integration flow, I'm just putting a content modifier. With the content modifier, I can even actually give a test message. I'll give form a JSON model. Yeah. Before this one, like I have my test CPA flow and I'm giving a user-based role with ESB messaging.send. Okay. And I can deploy this iFlow now. iFlow is available. And this is my host. In this one, if I go to this URL, so this is your host with a port. So whenever you deploy a REST-based or HTTP-based address, it will actually bring HTTP followed by the address details. And whenever you deploy a SOAP-based flow, you actually have CFX over here, and it will deploy CFX over here. So this is in general that various different protocol we can actually deploy into this one. We can get started from here. The port is going to be 443. So here we have two options, either same like basic auth or none. If I want to give a basic auth, now I need to create a separate user ID for my CPA connectivity. So for this one, so in general, SAP actually transformed its architecture from SID based to OAuth 2.0 based ones. So in order to do that one in the instance and subscription, you need to create a separate metadata for your instance. If I go here, I can add, I'm creating a new instance for this one because SCPI requires those instance. In order to run your iFlow, you need process runtime. So these are the various runtime that SAP is offering us up. So Cloud Foundry, which is native to SAP BTP, and Kima is nothing but actually it's a Docker-based container where actually you can move your entire. So when it chooses Cloud Foundry, so it will be deployed into SAP's data center. And when you choose Kima, you have an option to move your Docker from one data center to other data center. Just give me a minute, team. Like I can check with the cost and I can go ahead and create this one. Looks like this service involves some more costing. So I can check with the team and I can make it available. So probably we can check internally and we can come back with this one because process runtime is a one. When you deploy an iFlow, you need to create a separate OAuth based client ID and client secret, and that client ID and client secret will be used in your API management to connect your SCPI as an API. Okay, so till I get my complete instance available, I'm just giving us none. Once instances are available, I can go ahead and show you how to consume those client ID and client secret in your basic authentication here, or you can actually use the same thing in your key value mapping. Yeah. So now I use CPI as my test client, as my test backend system. So I can even actually expose any CPA based flow as an API proxy to the outside world. The URL I can give the same URL. You can use the same thing for your title. Version is optional. You can give version or you can leave as it is. When you give version, then this will come as part of your naming convention. So I'm leaving as it is. I'm creating that API. So this is failed because we do not have authentication. So in order to have the authentication, we need the OAuth based. So I'll get it created tomorrow on this one. This is giving the same issue. So I'll get the backend system details, and at least we can even try to get the metadata either from backend or from SAP system. So both will configure tomorrow. So just in this way, you can create your APIs in SAP API management, and you can expose your API to your consumer. So a consumer application could be your mobile application, or it could be your any third-party systems, or your enterprise system where they want to connect your APIs. Okay, so this is brief about your API management. Any queries till this time? You can go to the next. So we talked in detail about different mechanisms, different types of APIs. Like APIs can be REST-based, SOAP-based, and push notification. And these are the various use cases where actually you can use APIs. So we've gone through the APIs, how to create different APIs with SAP CPI and everything. Okay. So when it comes to the different APIs, right? Like, so let me cover different types of protocol in APIs. So at least you guys will have a different approach. So APIs are in general three different types. One is REST API, SOAP-based API, and your OData-based API. So your REST APIs, you can even have the REST API from your S4 system, and you can even consume that API or expose that API to the end consumer using the same navigation path. So as of like, if you go to your SAP API Hub, you can find plenty of REST API from SAP S4 box, and you can use that API to expose to your consumer with defined policies as well as with defined throttling effect to your consumer using that one. So API management used for that purpose. Okay, so coming back to your SOAP-based API. So let's take an example, as of today, an example of invoice creation. So invoice creation, when it comes to async mechanism, SAP provides SOAP API for that one. And you can use the same approach to expose that API to the outside. Okay, so, and push notification APIs are nothing but, so let's take an example in BTP or in any SaaS system where you will have a notification information, and that information will be triggered as a messaging API to your consumer. So in order to do the push notification, your consuming system will consume your API, and it pushes the API to the outside world. So that's a separate. So your API can be, or mostly it will be a REST, and but your messaging, your consuming API will be, consuming system will convert those REST API to a messaging API and push that to the consumer system as a messaging. So these are the major API technology that we cover as of. And when it comes to the OData API, right? Like, so as of we have two different metadata for OData. So OData is nothing but Open Data Protocol, where it has OData V2 version and V4 version. So V2 version is a kind of a basic version where you can actually handle mostly a stateful, and in some cases you can even handle stateless. But in some other cases you cannot handle stateless kind of information. If I want to have a full-fledged stateless information, I need to go for OData V4 API. So OData V4 API offers multiple, both your binding like two-way binding, and it offers stateful and stateless in full-fledged, and also it offers to extend that API in-house using SAP Graph. And that's a beauty of V4 version. And V4 version is available in latest SAP system that is available from 1902. So when you have a SAP system which has with more than 1902, you will have V4 version, and you can even combine multiple API in SAP Graph, and you can have your common canonical model in SAP Graph, and you can actually provide to your consumer system. Coming back to your SOAP API, it's a standard API, and that supports. So when you expose an API, you will have a two kind of API architecture. Either it could be a SOAP synchronous or SOAP asynchronous. In case of SOAP synchronous, you will get a response from your consumer system, like from your producer system, which is nothing but your S4. So consumer expects that response, like whether if my invoice got created or not. If it is created, it will expect an invoice number back. So in case of asynchronous one, like you will see all your APIs are used by your consumer, but your APIs information as well as error log will be captured in your S4 AF, which is nothing but application interfacing programming. And you can see all your, let's take an example. These APIs will give only an acknowledgement back to your consumers. And in case of any failures and that requires any further follow-up, we need to set up other further mechanism in AF, which is nothing but application interfacing programming. So these are the different APIs. And as I talked about messaging API, which is an event-based API, which are used as of using Event Hub as well as with enterprise messaging. Messaging APIs are, it's a common REST API. So under those APIs will be pushed out of your system either through Event Hub or enterprise messaging. Enterprise messaging offers another service called enterprise mesh. From the enterprise mesh, you can even receive that event, and those events will be managed. Those events will be pushed to your messaging system, and from that messaging system, it can push all the messaging information. So this is another use case where we can use enterprise messaging extensively using event mesh, and that event mesh has a capability to push a notification from SAP. So example of events are like your business partner creation. Those are lightweight events. Whenever a business partner is created, those events can be pushed as a lightweight event. And sales order event, whenever sales orders are created, and those sales orders will be pushed to your consumer as a very lightweight event using event mesh. In those architecture, you will be having SAP CPI, which actually transforms into a very lightweight event and push that to your messaging system. So those are different use cases we can talk in detail. Okay. So coming back to your API management. So as you see, whenever you go to any API in api.sap.com, you see the documentation. Let's take an example. You see a API reference documentation that is created using a Swagger or a YAML technology. So whenever you get a metadata, so consumer expects that API to be created in Swagger format or an YAML format or an Open API format. In order to create a Swagger API, there is a site called Swagger Editor. So this is nothing but your Swagger Editor where you can actually have your API information on your left. So in case of this one, I'll go to this API. So in general, you have your API in 3 different formats, either in JSON. This is a Open API documentation standard, and YAML is another standard. ADMX is your metadata. So I can even copy either JSON format or YAML format to my Swagger editor, and I can see and I can even modify those information. I will go to YAML format. I can download that one. Once you paste this one, like you can see your entire API here. Okay, so let's take an example. If you want to change anything in this API, you can do something here. Like you can go to this one. If I want to change any export, you can give an extension like this. Okay. So methods which comes under this export will get modified. So under this path, it has 2 methods, both get and post. Those are getting modified. So this is in general, this is how you have to use your Swagger editor. And when you expose an API, that's what I told you initially, right? Like any consumer, they expect a API documentation, which is nothing but the Swagger documentation like this. And let's take an example. If you have only OData service metadata, you can even convert that into an Swagger editor using an automation tool. I can show you that one at last. But actually, I would recommend the team to learn each and every component about your Swagger editor. Swagger is a major component. So that supports for your Open API 2.0, Swagger 2.0 and Open API 3.0. So till 2.0, it is called Swagger format. And when it comes to 3.0, it is now Open API because it supports your REST and OData call without any protocol transformation in a single documentation. So that's a new editing, new Open API standard that they brought in with 3.0 architecture. And in this editor, you can even actually create and modify all the extensions. Let's check. I have different API proxies for each and every operation. You can define all those things. So this consumer will be happy that if you expose this one, and they will actually program their model using this transformation methods. So you can actually make a note of edited as swagger.io, so where you can convert your any EDMX file to your API standard through this one. Going back to your so that's what we covered about RAML and Open API. So RAML is the language which is for REST-based API, which is whenever it's a JSON API, you can put into Swagger. Swagger.io will convert that into YAML, and we can see that one. So RAML and Open YAML are same, but RAML stands for your REST-based YAML client, and YAML stands for its own YAML information. And all this API will be into Open API format. So Visual, I think, so since you're from integration background, I believe you might have familiar with Visual and also the default XML strategies. Yeah. So this is so when we talked about API, right, like the first is implementation first, contract first approach. Whenever we do an implementation of an API, it is good to have our API provider created first, and then create your own API from the API management. Once your APIs are ready, we always recommend everyone to go ahead and create the contract and expose the contract either in your API or expose in the enterprise-wide API documentation. So at an enterprise, they will have different API documentation. Once you develop this API in an Open API editor, this is your full final contract, and you can save this contract into a YAML file or JSON file. Mainly, if you're having this file in this way, it's a YAML file. And if you want to convert into JSON, there is another tool to convert the YAML to JSON, and you can publish that to your enterprise account, or you can even save this one under your Open Editor one. And this contract is very, very necessary for your consumer to understand. So when you come to your API management here in the tool under resources, here is the one like you can put your contracts. Let's take an example. I have a contract like this. You can copy this contract. You can put the same contract here. Okay, so this will give my all my data services. I'm just putting an example, but this is how either you can put your contract here or into your enterprise-wide model where you want. Yeah. Since I don't have that much path, it is giving an issue, but this is a way. So whenever you have a path, and this path will be connected to your multiple path inside your policies. So here you will have a number of policies, a number of paths created, and all those paths will be tied up to that path, whatever you have in the system. Okay, so this is in general like how to expose your contract outside. Any more queries till this time?
The first example of API, okay. So you are exposing the S4 HANA SOAP service as an API, right?
OData API. So this is an OData API. I gone to the business hub. Let's take an example. So I gone to the business API dot business. This is nothing but API hub. So and this is also used to called as a business accelerator. I gone to the business accelerator. I got the API name and I got the EDMX file. So for my reference, I have my YAML as well as the EDMX file. And this is my OData service. So how I'm calling as OData service? Because it tells the type of your API is a OData service. So this is a OData service. I'm actually using that OData service and I'm actually converting this as an API management. Management. So in general, any sales order or purchase order will be an OData API. So as very limited one, I can go through that one also later. So that has very, very limited requirement also.
Okay.
Yeah. So whenever you create an API, right, like you can even have the API contract as your SAP and actually you can implement a number of paths like your resources. So that you need to implement as part of your target endpoint. So that comes under your policies. So whenever you have a API paths, you need to have a number of paths. Otherwise, your API will not allow you to save.
Okay.
We can talk in detail. About those.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks.